It all began with a move on a Tuesday afternoon, under a leaden sky that threatened a storm that never quite broke. I lived in an old building with high ceilings and wooden floors that creaked with every step I took, as if the structure itself were alive, guarding the secrets of those who had inhabited it before me. My window, a large white wooden sash, looked directly at the building across the street, a mass of glass and steel that seemed to observe my privacy with an almost insulting technological coldness. He arrived without moving trucks, which was the first red flag I chose to ignore. He carried only a few reinforced cardboard boxes and a worn leather suitcase that looked like it had traveled halfway around the world. He settled into apartment 4B. His name was Julian. From the first time I saw him through the glass, something about his posture captivated me in a way I cannot explain without feeling a chill. It wasn't just his physical appeal, the defined jawline that looked sculpted from stone and eyes of a blue so deep they shifted to black depending on the time of day. It was his calm. A calm that was unsettling in a city that never stops. I observed his movements during that first week. Julian didn't turn on the main lights. He preferred the indirect glow of a floor lamp that bathed his living room in an amber hue. I would watch him read for hours, always sitting in the same position, with a steaming cup of coffee that never seemed to finish. I felt drawn to that mystery, to that bubble of peace he seemed to have built right before my eyes. What I didn't know was that the bubble was designed specifically for me to want to step inside. Our initial encounters were purely visual, a silent language from window to window. From my balcony, I would pretend to concentrate on my art books, but my eyes always ended up drifting toward 4B. He was always there, as if he knew the exact moment I would step out for fresh air. He didn't look away. On the contrary, he held eye contact with a confidence that made me feel exposed, yet strangely desired. It was a game of desire and curiosity where he always seemed to have the upper hand. One Friday, the rain finally broke. I was returning from work, loaded with grocery bags and my umbrella fighting against the wind. When I reached the front door, there he was. Julian held the door for me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, but lit up his face in a way that made me forget the cold. "The girl with the red-covered book is in trouble with the weather," he said in a deep, vibrating baritone voice. "And the neighbor from the shadows has finally decided to step into the light," I replied, trying to hide the trembling of my hands. That afternoon, sheltered in the doorway, we talked for an hour. I was surprised by how much we had in common: obscure Russian literature, a taste for 1950s jazz, and a shared aversion to crowds. He invited me to dinner at his apartment the following Saturday. "Cooking is an act of trust," he told me. And I, blinded by the thrill of finding someone who spoke my language, accepted without hesitation. Crossing the threshold of 4B was a surreal experience. The apartment smelled of a mix of sandalwood and fresh rain, the exact scent I always looked for in artisanal candle shops but could never find. The lighting was perfect, and the walls were decorated with prints that looked like they were taken directly from my own inspiration boards on Pinterest. "It's my favorite song," I whispered as I heard the first chords of a melancholy piano piece playing in the background. "I know. It's a piece that evokes a shared solitude," he replied, pouring me a glass of red wine that turned out to be the exact vintage I had mentioned in a Facebook post 3 years ago. The dinner was a display of perfection. Julian knew exactly when to dive deep into a topic and when to let the silence speak. His hands, long and elegant, moved with a dexterity that hypnotized me. Every time he brushed against me, passing the salt, filling my glass. I felt an electric shock that started at the base of my neck and traveled down my spine. My physical response was undeniable, a growing wetness and a heat that clouded my judgment. I felt like I was in a movie where I was the lead and he was the perfect director. That night, under the dim candlelight, he made love to me. It was an experience of total connection and sensory mastery. His hands knew my body better than I did. He knew where to apply pressure, where to kiss lightly, and how to lead me to a climax with a slowness that made me sob with pleasure. In that moment, holding him in the dark, I believed I had reached the ultimate reward, the perfect love. However, perfection comes at a price, and mine was suspicion. As the weeks went by, Julian became a constant presence. He always knew when I was sad, he always showed up with my favorite dessert just when I had a craving, and he always knew what to say to calm my anxieties. But something didn't fit. It was as if he didn't have a personality of his own, but was rather a mirror of mine. Doubt turned into obsession. One day, while he went down to pick up a delivery, he left his computer open on the coffee table. I know I shouldn't have. I know trust is the foundation of everything, but my investigation instinct was stronger. I searched through his files, expecting to find something common: bills, family photos, work emails. But instead, I found a hidden folder deep within the system folder, protected by a password I managed to guess by trying my own birth date. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. There were folders with my name. Inside, hundreds of screenshots of my social media, including photos from 10 years ago that I had already deleted. There was a detailed log of my daily movements, what time I went to the gym, what brand of coffee I bought, even transcripts of conversations I had held on my phone on the balcony. He hadn't met me by chance. He had been hacking me and stalking me for months before moving into the building across the street. Julian had built his apartment, his musical taste, his way of speaking, and even his technique in bed based on my data. He didn't love me, he was executing me like a computer program. The sound of the lock pulled me out of my trance. I snapped the laptop shut, but my face gave me away. Julian walked in with 2 paper bags, his usual smile etched on his face, but upon seeing me, his expression turned ice cold. The perfect neighbor mask disintegrated in a second. "You shouldn't have looked in there," he said in a voice devoid of all human emotion. "Who are you, Julian?" I asked, feeling the air escape my lungs. "This is a sickness. You've been spying on me, you've manipulated every second of our relationship." He placed the bags on the floor with terrifying calmness and approached me. I backed away until I hit the window, the same window from which he had watched me like prey. "I did it for you," he whispered, trying to touch my face. "I wanted to be the man you always dreamed of. I studied your fears to protect you, your desires to satisfy you. Isn't that what everyone wants? Someone who understands them perfectly?" "This isn't understanding me, this is possessing me," I screamed, pushing him away. "You've stolen my freedom to choose." I took advantage of his moment of surprise to run for the door. Julian didn't scream, he didn't pursue me with violence. He simply stood there, in the middle of his perfect living room, watching me with an artificial sadness that scared me more than any threat. I reached my apartment, locked all the doors, and sat on the floor, trembling. That same night I packed the essentials and went to a hotel. The next day, I reported the incident. The police investigation revealed that Julian was a former systems analyst with a history of stalking in another city. He had used his hacking skills to create psychological profiles of his victims and infiltrate their lives without raising suspicion. When the police searched his apartment, they discovered the walls were lined with directional microphones pointed toward my window. He wasn't just watching me, he was listening to me breathe while I slept. Today, months later, I live in a different city, in a building where my windows don't look out onto any other apartments. I have deleted my social media and learned to value the imperfection of real encounters. Sometimes, when I walk down the street and smell sandalwood, my heart skips a beat. I wonder how many Julians are out there, watching from the shadows of cybercrime, waiting for the moment to become the reflection of someone else's desires. I have taken back the reins of my destiny, but I know a part of me will always be on alert, remembering that perfection is often just the disguise of a digital obsession.